Everyone advocated for the problem student when I failed him. George needed to pass my class to graduate from high school. I called George several times during the semester to discuss his low grade and incomplete assignments, but he mostly ignored these conversations. I told him that if he completed and turned in all assigned work from that point until spring break, I would allow him to make up the large amount of missing work from the beginning of the semester. I let George know that he could still pass the class with a good grade if he put in the effort. However, nothing changed in George's behavior or grades. This was not a problem for me as I had given him multiple opportunities to improve. When all was said and done, George got a solid 60.3% in the class before the final exam. I informed George that the final exam would be pass or fail for him, as practically any failing grade on the exam would make his overall grade low enough to not meet the requirements for high school graduation. George took it lightly, saying, "No problem, I got this." He certainly didn't. George ended up scoring only a 39 on the final exam and failed the class as a result. The day after the final exam, which was also the day before final grades were due, George came to see me. He asked if he could make up any work or do extra credit to pass the class. I told him that I regretted to inform him that I had given him several clear opportunities throughout the semester to make up missing work and improve his grade, and he had ignored all of those opportunities. I reminded George that I had told him it was now or never on this final exam. Unfortunately, he did not pass the exam. I advised him that a school counselor would probably suggest that he retake the class in summer school. I added that since he was smart enough, he could choose to take the class at the local community college during the summer, thus earning credits for both college and high school. I knew that George planned to attend community college after graduating anyway, so that seemed like a smarter option for him to catch up on the credits he needed. George responded that he had relatives coming to town that summer and really needed to graduate from high school as planned. I felt sorry for him, but rules are rules. Since he did not receive a passing grade in the class, George left my classroom visibly frustrated. About 30 minutes later, the dean of my school came by and said that George's father was a good friend of his. He asked if there was anything we could do to get George to pass and graduate on time. I explained again that I had given George enough opportunities to make up missing work and improve his grade during the semester, and he had refused to take advantage of those opportunities. In my opinion, this situation was concluded and decided. The dean and I talked a little more, but ultimately he left without further arguments. About 15 minutes later, there was a sudden and loud commotion outside my classroom. George had returned, this time accompanied by his visibly upset mother and a security guard. The guard stated that George and his mother said they had a scheduled meeting with me. I calmly responded that I had no scheduled meeting with them, and they had explicitly told me earlier that day that there was no need to discuss the matter further. I reiterated that the discussion was over from my side, then closed the door to my classroom and watched the security guard escort George and his mother off the campus. About 30 minutes after the confrontation, the assistant principal in charge of my department appeared at my door. He asked what was going on with George and why I had failed him in my class. I explained again that George simply had not met the academic requirements to pass the course, and then he asked if there was anything George could still do to earn credit for the class. At this point, I became a little agitated and honestly replied that I did not appreciate them continuing to question me about this matter. George had failed the class, that was established. I added that I was not actually questioning the situation, but simply wanted to understand what was happening from their perspective. The assistant principal reiterated firmly that George had failed plain and simple. The assistant principal could support me in upholding the decision or not, but the facts were not going to change. I added that we were in California after all, and only classroom teachers have the authority to determine and assign grades to students. The assistant principal left my classroom shortly thereafter without further discussion, but as he was leaving, he made sure to inform me that even the principal in person was coming to question me about the situation and this particular student's grades. After the assistant principal left, I went to attend to some paperwork in the office, but when I returned to my classroom about 15 minutes later, I found the principal in person waiting just outside my door. I entered my classroom, and he followed me after closing the door. Behind him, The principal immediately asked what was going on with George and why I was failing him in my class. The principal added that George's mother was currently in his office demanding to know why I refused to speak with her and allow her son to pass my class. Keeping my composure, I calmly explained that I would not speak with George's mother because they had lied to campus security just to gain access to my classroom earlier. Beyond that, there was really nothing left to discuss. George had failed the class, plain and simple. The principal was welcome to review George's grades and scores himself in the online system if he wanted confirmation. I was completely honest with the principal at this point, admitting that I deeply resented him taking time to question me about this major issue. I also graded strictly based on student performance on assignments and exams in my class. I did not feel the need to justify or defend every grade I assigned to the dean, the assistant principal, the parents, or anyone else. In my opinion, I was either competent in my job as an educator and should be allowed to handle grading and student matters accordingly, or I didn't know how to properly do my job and needed to be put on a corrective program so I could improve my methods to their satisfaction. But this closed-door review of the grades I had determined was not appropriate, nor was it how we were expected to handle things. I was fully willing to listen to constructive suggestions on how I could improve my methods if he or others knew better ways I could do my job. But these kinds of confrontations and debates about my decision-making needed to stop. I frankly told the principal that we needed to have a serious discussion as a school about what constituted appropriate and professional behavior for administrative staff when interacting with teachers on academic matters. This was not the time or place for that conversation, but emphatically things could not continue as they had today. The principal apologized for the chaos surrounding George's situation and for questioning my judgment. He agreed that we needed to clarify proper procedures for issues like this in the future. After the principal left my classroom, I later learned that George angrily threatened to hit my slim and fit body and see me after school again. This threat seemed rather empty to me, given that George was just a thin teenage boy of about 5 feet 11 inches and 146 pounds. Meanwhile, I was a fully developed adult man of 6 feet 5 inches and 250 pounds. If he still wants to confront me, I would like to see him.